That, both singing and playing harmonica, is... Did I just say harmonica? Did I just gender a musical? There's a hismonica and a harmonica? Anyway, that singing and playing harmonica is Bruce Willis and his band performing Devil Woman. We're going to be talking about Bruce Willis today. That's why. But it's the notes here say the performance is from a DVD special feature, Sin City Live in Concert, which captures Willis from a show he and the band threw for the cast and the crew of Sin City. I just feel like the existence of this song on my show and the notes that I have are some indication, I could be wrong about this, of some indication of what the life of Jonathan McPants, our producer, was like before he got married. I feel I could be wrong about that. I feel like it's an arc. Like, before he got married, that would be something he would really be spending some time with, would be the DVD special features for Sin City. All right, so I want to say two other things. One of them is, I hate April Fool's Day. If we're going to get rid of the daylight savings or the time change at spring from standard to savings or whatever it is, if we're going to get rid of that, let's get rid of April Fool's Day too. It's the stupidest thing. I sort of feel about April Fool's Day the way heavy drinkers feel about New Year's Eve, which is this kind of amateur night. Every day should be potentially April Fool's Day. There should be a potential for tomfoolery and pranks and craziness in every single day. But imposing it all in this thing, and then you have to look at Twitter and go, wow, did Craig Kimbrell really just get traded, or is that some stupid April Fool's thing? Anyway, that's number one. Number two, I don't say this enough, but like I was thinking today as we were getting ready for the show, that our panelists today were sending these really interesting emails. If people saw how much work our uncompensated panelists put into the shows that we do, they'd be amazed. I mean, it really is something that's impressive and fun and interesting. And also it's just like a very nice thing that they do for the show. Having dealt with a not-so-nice guest this week, I appreciate nice people even more. So let me say who some of the nice people are. First of all, history is being made right now. Shawn Murray is a stand-up comedian, writer, and the host of the Nobody Asked Shawn podcast. He has been making history because he's the first person ever, I believe, to appear on the nose twice in 1 week, which is almost impossible to do, except that we did a special emergency first responder podcast about the slap earlier this week, and Shawn was on that too. So Shawn, the Colin McEnroe show museum people are asking if they can have just like an item of clothing or something that you wore on one of those appearances, because obviously this is going to have to be memorialized there at the museum. Carolyn Paine is an actress, comedian, and dancer, the founder, director, and choreographer of CONNetic Dance, and one of the hardest working people in show business. And she would like everyone to know that right now. And Bill Yousman is a professor of media studies at Sacred Heart University. I have no idea where he ranks in terms of hardest working people in academia, but I'm going to say certainly
not hard at all.
No, above the 50.
Big slacker.
Above the 50% line, definitely. I don't know what percentile. All right. So a little bit later, we're going to talk about a piece by Ross Douthat, kind of perhaps poorly timed in several different ways, using the Oscars. He wrote this pre-Oscars to lament not only the death of interest in the Oscars, which may be experiencing a recrudescence, but maybe the death of the movies as well. We'll also talk about Winning Time, which I believe starts in 1979 and chronicles the rise of what came to be the Showtime Lakers. But it's a fictionalized treatment with actors, not the actual people. But we're going to begin, in fact, with Bruce Willis. We got the bad news this week that Bruce Willis has aphasia. He's stepping away from his career. He's no longer able because of cognitive medical problems to remember his lines or to follow the directions to get through an individual scene. This apparently has been going on for some time. I had been told, 12 to 18 months ago that they would have to put tape cards up all over the set and stuff like that so he could see what he was supposed to say next. But it's gotten really bad, and his family kind of made this announcement. And so, Shawn, I'd like to start, and you and I are very, very different ages, so I don't know if this is going to land the same way with you. And it's also not an original observation with me, but I sort of feel like you could almost say that Bruce Willis invented or perfected the kind of the action hero we've grown very accustomed to, which is somebody who takes the action and violence, fairly seriously, but also not very seriously, able to sort of wink at the whole situation, able to be genuinely funny and personable while shooting and being shot at. Now this is kind of how everybody rolls, whether it's Ryan Reynolds or, to pick somebody who hardly ever gets talked about these days, Will Smith. There's a way in which he kind of started that whole thing. But I don't know, as a young guy, maybe you don't see it that way.
I definitely see it that way. Bruce Willis, like Die Hard was sort of the template for like all action movies for like the next 20 years after it came out. Like it was such a refreshing thing. Bruce Willis is such a like an interesting figure because like Die Hard works because he's such an unlikely hero and action star in not only inside the movie, but also like if you look at his career, like you didn't expect that to be where his career went. So then for him to become, and in the worst Die Hard movies, the later sequels don't work because he's too much of like, now he's like a superhero essentially. Like the whole point of John McClane is that he was just an average guy who just like, like you just picked the wrong day to try to rob Nakatomi Towers.
The fact that you could roll Nakatomi Towers off your tongue, as could I, as I'm guessing Bill probably could too, is also, when people say that Die Hard is the best Christmas movie, they're not kidding. And it's sort of the best Christmas movie also because there is a real humanity to the whole thing. I think, Bill, I'm going to save Carolyn to the end because I have no idea what relationship she has to Bruce Willis and his works. But there's a way in which Bruce Willis was able to infuse what was ordinarily a kind of stock character in an action movie with a kind of humanity that I think is no small feat.
Yeah. Well, the best Christmas movie is definitely The Grumpiest Cat at Christmas Time, which if you haven't seen, I think it's
that's a sore subject. Carolyn's cat got turned down for that role. Don't even mention the movie. All right.
But actually, yeah, Bruce Willis does, on the one hand, kind of a grumpy cat, but also very, very charming. And, I relate to him as, one of those good looking, prematurely balding guys. So, I'm right there with him and all of the stuff that brings. But I'm always, I think one of the things about Bruce Willis that I always thought, and part of what makes this so tragic, but of course it would be tragic for anybody who works with language, but he had a comic facility that you wouldn't necessarily expect from him, from someone who was in the roles that he was cast in, from someone who had the appearance that he had. I'm always attracted to people like that. John Hamm is another one who, incredibly good-looking kind of matinee idol guy, and of course the despondent, depressive of Mad Men, but a unbelievably gifted comic actor. And I think that Bruce Willis had some of that going for him as well, which did bring other dimensions to these roles that he played.
So, yeah, I'm so glad that you said that. McPants and I were saying the same thing, that starting out in Moonlighting, he just was very, very funny in that.
Right.
And I feel like The Whole Nine Yards is maybe kind of an underrated funny movie. Amanda Peet is the funniest thing in it, but he's really funny too. And he kind of sells the comedy. So, Carolyn, as usual, although I know you well, I know you not at all. I have no idea what you think about Bruce Willis.
Okay, well, you were right to exclude me from the Die Hard conversation because I am so sorry to admit this, but I've actually never seen Die Hard.
No! You have to have seen Die Hard like 22 times the way the rest of us have.
No, I don't know how I've never watched it. No one has ever forced me into it, and I haven't entered upon it willingly. So I can't speak to that. But, like what Bill said and what you said, I have a deep respect for him. I know that Bruce Willis is this great like action hero. I haven't really seen a lot of his action hero movies, but what I have admired him for is his comedy work. And in things like Moonrise Kingdom, and a personal favorite of mine is Death Becomes Her. He's brilliant in that with Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep. So yeah, I think this kind of, what this news about Bruce Willis, like it hits anyone who is a performer or an athlete. I mean, anyone, but as performers and athletes, you kind of know, like there's this thing inside you that's like this little ticking time bomb. Like you live in fear of the day you can't do what you love anymore. And so when you hear something like this, where somebody just has this moment where it's just kind of truncated and they're forced to step back from doing what they know and what they love and what is their life, you feel as a performer really, it like hits you hard, and if you really get a sense of the tragedy of it.
Yeah, and Shawn, the tragedy I think is maybe deepened or compounded a little bit. It does appear, though, that Bruce Willis has been in, I don't know, like a lot of like 10, 20 direct-to-video movies over the last few years where either he himself or maybe his family have been kind of riding him through these appearances in unmemorable movies that I don't think any of us have seen, some of them with fairly large paydays, maybe with kind of the understanding that his days as an earner were limited, although it's not necessarily the way you want to go out, right? Making a lot of junk.
Not at all. And like, people have been criticizing the response to those movies in recent days after this story came out. Saying like, oh, people didn't know what was going on with Bruce Willis. But it's like, the problem with that was there's been so many actors like Nick Cage for a period of his career who got in tax debt and were like, I'm going to make a bunch of junk to make money. So we had no clue that this is what was happening with Bruce Willis. We just kind of thought it was just yet another story of like, okay, this guy, like Nick Cage, like was buying like $1 million comic books a few years ago, and then he had to start making like stuff we've never seen before. So we thought Bruce Willis was probably just also a comic book fan.
So yeah, Bill, I mean, it's now time to mention the Razzies for people who don't know. The Razzies are this kind of self-appointed awards entity that gives out awards for bad movies. And since you were the one, I think, who alerted us to this story, I'll let you grab the baton here.
Yeah, so the Razzies actually had given Bruce Willis a special award created just for him, like the Bruce Willis Bad Movie Award or whatever they called it, because apparently he had just in this past year appeared in 8, really schlocky things. But that was before the news came out. When the news came out, they then rescinded the award because they felt like they didn't want that kind of disrespect to him or his family in the wake of this. They also simultaneously had given a Razzie to Shelley Duvall, and then they rescinded that because of stuff that's come out about how poorly she was treated on the set of The Shining. So for me, this just raises some questions of, we've just acknowledged what a horrible tragedy this is for him and for his family, although, this other stuff that's coming out is kind of questioning how his family was treating him. But at the same time, so if we find out that something bad has happened to them, does that make us reevaluate everything that came before? If these were really still really bad movies, is it that serious that we then have to kind of go back and say, oh, like we didn't do that? You also can't erase it from time because, yeah, they did do that. So I'm just not sure about their whole approach of then kind of backing off from that.
Well, I think they just didn't want to be the people who were doing this at this moment. I mean, it's just not a good look, no matter how you might really feel about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't want, I mean, who knows, internally they may be saying, well, that would have been really fun. I wish we could still do it, but I don't think we can get away with it anymore. But Carolyn, it also brings up the question of the Razzies. I don't know. It's sometimes you look at the Razzies and you think, well, why do they even exist? We know which movies we think are bad, but also, you take a movie like House of Gucci, people are pretty evenly divided about whether it really deserves, terrible kinds of Razzies or whether it's one of the best movies of last year. I mean, one person's trash is another person's treasure, right?
Yeah. I mean, so we're just like all critics now, right? Like everyone gets like a platform to put out whatever, everyone's on Twitter talking about what they're watching, what they're, seeing and how they feel about it. It was my understanding that this whole thing with the Razzies, specifically with Bruce Willis, was that they did in fact tweet something kind of, they threw a little shade at it. It was in response to the announcement about his health. And then that was when they rescinded the Razzies. And that's where I think that this is like slimy. Like, I'm all for the Razzies. I think like, I love making fun of stuff and making fun of people. Like, I think there is definitely a place for that, especially when, the amount of money that is spent on some of these movies, like these Bruce Willis movies. I didn't know he had made like 9 bazillion movies in the past, like 4 years. That's crazy. Like, why do we need to be spending that money on these movies? So yeah, give them a Razzie, like absolutely make fun of this ridiculous situation we're in with these movies getting made. But I don't like the tweet that they put out. I was trying to find it, is like super, it was in really poor taste. So I think that's why they had to like back off and be like, and be like, no, we're not doing this. And I think they threw in the Shelley Duvall thing too, before they could get in any more trouble.
All right. We have to make a segue from there. Although I do want to say, I hope one thing people do on Twitter in a positive way is, I don't know, maybe list your 5 indispensable Bruce Willis movies, because I think it's really different from person to person. I'm definitely a Fifth Element person. I think 16 Blocks with him and Mos Def is just this underrated masterpiece. My masterpiece might be overstating it. And as I say, Whole Nine Yards is just a great, really funny movie. All right, so we have to move on from there. Ross Douthat, a columnist for the New York Times, has a piece. He kind of used the onrushing Oscars as an occasion to talk about not just the death of interest in the Oscars, but also the death of interest in movies, the fact that people aren't going to movie theaters anymore. Before we plunge in, I will say, and not just because Ross has been on the show recently, and not just because his wife, hi Abby, is apparently a fairly regular listener to this show, but I think Ross, among conservative critics, is one of the people who really kind of gets culture. Often conservative opinion writers, political opinion writers, when they try to write about culture, it's like they've seen like 4 movies in the last 2 years and they don't really seem to know anything. Ross really gets it. Apparently he's been really enjoying Winning Time, which we're going to be talking about in the next segment. He mentions Bruce Willis. This is before the aphasia. But his point basically is that pictures got small because so much of high quality creative content moved from the big screen to the small screen. This is not big news. We've known this for a while. But that plus COVID raises questions about whether people are ever going to go back to the movie theaters. I don't know, Bill. I felt this was a premature piece just in the sense that I don't know the answer to any of this until COVID is really over and people feel super comfortable going to a movie theater. It could be they're just dying to get back there and watch something on a big screen.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's a premature piece, but simultaneously it seems also like something that we keep hearing over the years a lot, that, the movies are over, it's the end of them, they'll never be the same. I just don't know about all of that. Like you say, he mentions that, people didn't see many of the leading Oscar contenders in theaters. And my first reaction to that is, well, yeah, it's still a pandemic. And he grudgingly admits this kind of in the next paragraph, but then he still insists that movies are just over. And so for me, it just felt a little bit like just kind of a rehash of what happens so much, which is taking what are inevitable changes and then reading them as the end of something. And the reality is that most things don't end. They just change. I mean, the Cold War? Now, do we have to recognize that the Cold War never really ended? It just metamorphized. And so I think that's some of the reservations that I've been having with it, with this particular piece. I do think he makes some really good points about the differences between the big screen and the movie going experience and sitting home watching it without all of that, and how that even changes the way movies are made depending upon where the producers think it's going to end up. I think those are really good points, and I think those are things that the movie industry is going to have to reckon with. But some of the larger claims, I just had some reservations about.
Shawn, I just want to get you to react any way you want to, but just to kind of lead into it. Another thought that I had afterwards. First of all, it's a very thought-provoking piece, and at the end he talks about how maybe we have to treat movies more like the way we treat symphonies or ballets or things like that, and just understand that working to preserve them and have that particular audience experience is something that will take some extra effort as opposed to something that will just naturally happen as a way of selling overpriced popcorn. But I also feel like nobody really knows what's going to happen. I mean, it could be 15 years from now that, that you, Shawn, will be riding into town on a wagon in a post-apocalyptic afterscape and performing Die Hard with puppets, and there'll be no electricity and stuff. Or it could be that we'll all have some kind of VR thing that we do at home that's like even way better than sitting in a movie theater watching it on a big screen. But I'm guessing, Shawn, that you're still going to you're a movie guy. I assume you want to go to the movies.
I always want to go to movies. And also, yes, I am building that wagon just in case. So look out for that. But, I think it's sort of like what Bill said, it's just an evolution of culture. Like, I think the truth of the piece to me is that the movies are dead in the sense of like the way that we know them in the past. Like movies, I don't think will ever have the cultural sort of hold and like grab the attention of the nation the way it used to, like where like everyone would know like the best movie of the year. Like it's just not important. Like it's Euphoria now. It's it's Succession. It's TV. It's TikTok. It's whatever. But I don't think movies will ever disappear because there are always going to be people who want to go to the movie theater, myself included. But it's like that's like saying like when movies were created, this is the death of theater. It's like, well, Hamilton made like $1 billion and it's still running. So like it's just insane to like just call everything the death of whatever. And it's like, no, I think we're, it's just like, like Coda is not The Godfather, and not only in terms of like it's not as good as a movie, but also because no one's seen it.
Well, yes, Coda, as I pointed out in our emails this morning, is, I believe, the first Best Picture award winner to get no box office bump. Usually there's quite a box office bump if you win Best Picture, but that's not going to happen for Coda because Coda has essentially no box office presence. It's an Apple Plus product. So, Carolyn, you never like going to the movies in the first place. I've made you go to more movies than probably you've gone to voluntarily in the last 10 years. So I'm wondering how you react to all this.
That's true. I probably would have not gone to see, I probably would have maybe seen like 2 movies in the past 10 years if it weren't for you in this show. So, I think, I'm probably exactly what I am killing the movies. I am the slayer of movies. I do prefer, there is something that I prefer about television. And this article was really interesting to me because I found myself thinking when he was talking about how even with a really well done series, there's always like something left undone, or there are bad episodes or whole bad seasons. And a movie tends to like wrap things up better. But I think I like that imperfection. I like that kind of expectation of TV, of waiting for something and having to kind of get to live with these characters or the situation, like them or not, like having more time with them. And I like having time with them on my time. That's what I really don't like about the movies. As we know, I do not like having to sit there and not being able to hit pause when I want to do something like get food or go to the bathroom or talk about it. So I think that I am a product of that kind of evolution of the generation that kind of got this technology to allow us to have immediacy and control. So that I do think there is something to be said about this, like the age gap of people who love movies versus, not like, I like movies. I just want to watch them at home.
Right. I will say, reading Ross's piece, I was also thinking, I've been watching 1883 recently, which is really, really good. And I know Sam Elliott's not cool right now, but he's terrific in 1883. And I really like it as a season, as a series. It's on Paramount Plus. But I'd give a lot to see 2.5 hours of that on a big screen. It would just look so great, and there's some movies that you will never understand if you don't I think this is true with Terrence Malick movies in particular. Tree of Life, to the extent that anybody's going to like Tree of Life, and a lot of people are going to hate it no matter what. But if you don't see it on a big screen, you're just going to sit there going, why does this movie exist? Well, it exists because it's supposed to be on a big screen with great sound, and there's there's some basis for that. All right, Mr. McPants would like us to transition, so we will transition. We will take a little break. We'll come back. We'll talk about Winning Time.
When I was born, my mother died. She said, bye-bye, baby, bye-bye. I said, where you going? I'm just born. She said, I'll only be gone for a while. My mother loved to leave in style. That's why God made the movie.
Winning Time on HBO Max chronicles the building of the enterprise that became known as Showtime, a version of the LA Lakers that was led obviously by Magic Johnson, but also Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and a cast of others, coached ultimately by Pat Reilly. Winning Time on HBO Max is, I think, designed so that you can enjoy it if you are a basketball fan who maybe even remembers some of the details of those days. But also, and I think this is sort of the case that I'm experiencing in my own house, although the person that I live with and share a life with she enjoys basketball a lot, but I wouldn't necessarily be expected to like something like that. But she seems to be really enjoying it. Oddly enough, I think it's arguable that at least 4 episodes in, the star of this kind of ensemble type series, if there is one, is John C. Reilly as Jerry Buss. Not a name you necessarily know, but a guy who bought the Lakers from Jack Kent Cooke. So here's Dr. Jerry Buss, John C. Reilly, and I believe one of the many young honeys that he manages to lure into his bed. This character is actually named Honey, so that they didn't really have to think of a different name. All right, you're going to hear an exchange between the two of them, and then I think significantly on the last line, you're going to hear John C. Reilly go direct to camera, which is there's a lot of this kind of fourth wall stuff in the movie. Okay, here we go.
Basketball. I mean, look at it. It's like great sex. It's always moving. It's rhythmic. It's up close and personal. There's no pads or helmets for protection. It's just you and these other guys out there trying to get the ball into the hoop. It's a beautiful thing. And every single one of those guys plays that game with their own unique pizzazz and style. It's sexy. Come on. I mean, if there's 2 things in this world that make me believe in God, it's sex and basketball. You know? Hon? Honey?
I'm sleeping.
I know, I was just saying about sex and basketball. And
Yeah, I have a test in the morning.
you do? Her loss. That makes you the first to know. I'm about to buy a team.
Okay, so a lot to talk about here. Let's go to Bill Yousman. I know you are an unapologetic basketball fan. I'm wondering how this series is working for you so far. I sort of know the answer. I think it is fair to say that this is a very slow build. I mean, we're 4 episodes in, and we really, haven't even begun to see Showtime emerge. So there better be something else going on, enough to hold our attention. How's that going for you?
It's going well for me. I'm really enjoying it. As you say, I mean, part of this, and I am interested in this question of whether it is as enjoyable for someone who's not a basketball fan. I'm a huge basketball fan. Watching, playing. Here's a little side note. Here's a little inside basketball. Another nose panelist, Rand Richards Cooper, and I used to play pickup basketball together several times a week back in the day. He would always be the first one to tell everyone that he was much better than me, which is true. But, so I'm like really, really enmeshed in it. I'm a lifelong Boston Celtics fan, which means I'm obligated to be a Lakers hater. And even with my hatred for the Lakers, I'm really getting into this. I'm enjoying it a lot. I think you're right that it kind of picks up steam. For me, it really hit its stride in episode 4, which is the one that is the most recently available because it is a week-to-week release. And I thought that was just a fantastic episode. I really, really loved it. And there's another bit of that episode where rather than comparing basketball to sex, the coach that they bring in, Jack McKinney, goes into this, I really love discourse on why basketball is jazz rather than classical music. And it was just so entertaining for me. And I thought they constructed it so well that it really it hits really well for me.
McKinney, by the way, played by Tracy Letts. The performances in this movie. I mean, Carolyn, I'm really eager to know a lot about what you think about this. The performances in this, not a movie, but series. There are like all kinds of really interesting casting choices. Adrian Brody, I would not have seen him necessarily as Pat Reilly. Some of the guys who are playing players are really, truly remarkable. I'm sure we'll talk about some of these performances. And Gabby Hoffman playing this kind of harassed and often kind of bedraggled person who's the director of marketing for the Lakers is also doing a spectacular performance. But so, Carolyn, I know that you're maybe not the biggest sports fan in the world, but how's winning time for you?
Yeah, I am not a sports person at all, so I was a little concerned about how I would tell the show. But it's watchable. It sucks you in, and I have no idea who most of these people are. Like, I didn't know who Pat Reilly is in real life. I'm aware of who Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. Like, I'm aware of who those people are. But yeah, so to me, I mean, may as well just be fiction, So I think that changes my, I'm just killing you guys right now, I know, but it changes my perception a little. And for what it's worth as a show, I like it. And I like their editing techniques. I like the breaking of the fourth wall. I'm enjoying it. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep watching it now that I don't have to for the, next episodes.
We could just record that line and play it for most of your nose appearances, and then you wouldn't have to say it every time.
Yeah, that is fair. No, I like some things. Some things I'm really into. But this one, I mean, the acting performances make it worth the watch. It's interestingly done. You're not going to feel like you wasted your time.
Right. And, to your point that it might as well be fiction, there are some people saying, well, it kind of is fiction. There's ways in which this strays far enough from the truth that it isn't even within the allowable limit of mutating reality for the purpose of entertaining in particular. And maybe we'll get actually, before we go to Shawn, let's just play this clip right now. This is B3, Kat. So it's in particular the portrayal of Jerry West, who was, of course, a legendary Lakers star, then became their coach, eventually became their general manager. But one of the real, famous people in basketball, but often described as kind of a shy, super awkward kind of guy, a guy who really only came alive on the basketball court. He's portrayed very differently in this series. Here's a little bit of that.
We're picking Johnson.
That's a big mistake.
Well, all right. It's a mistake. But we're doing it, all right? Look, Moncrief is a fine player.
Great player. Moncrief is a great player. And you know what, Jerry? He's also a better scorer by 5 points a game. Which is exactly what this team needs to win.
Yeah. And Johnson's a star.
So was I! A star! I can pass behind my back, over my head. I can pass it out my if you want it. Do you know what? You want to know what it got me? Do you want to know what it got me? It got me. Go. It got me this, booby prize. Here it is. Oh. Hey, welcome him in. Here he is. Jerry West, MVP, the most valuable loser award. 1969 Celtics 4, Lakers 3, Jerry West. Winning and losing.
That may be a record for McPants having to bleep a clip that many times. So, Shawn, how about you? I mean, just the general question: are you visibly entertained by this series?
Yeah, I'm highly enjoying it. I'm a basketball fan to begin with, so that's interesting. I think this period of the NBA is the most interesting because this is when like the NBA really starts to become like a actual big deal in a real league and not just sort of like a bunch of tall guys on like Greyhound buses going across the country. It's very good. It's interesting. Like I do love the stylistic choices. Like I don't know if it always works. I don't know if it's necessary like to do the changing of the different type of film stocks and like using like sometimes like camcorders and sometimes using film cameras. But it's interesting. It keeps you like engaged. And I mean, I can totally see why someone like Jerry West is like, I don't want anything to do with that show. Like, and Magic Johnson as well.
Right. By the way, Quincy Isaiah, the guy who's playing Magic Johnson, is pretty remarkable, Shawn. And I feel like whenever you're doing something like that, if you're playing Magic Johnson, well, as Carolyn, who's not a sports fan, she has no trouble conjuring up an image of Magic Johnson. Everybody knows what he looks like, what he talks like, and kind of who he is. This is a hard thing to do, I think. And you also have to be plausibly, an NBA basketball player physically at times. And Shawn, I think this guy is really, it's pretty amazing what he's doing.
He's incredible. I don't know how they found him because, like you said, it's not just that he has to have the Magic Johnson charm and energy, but he also has to be like a plausibly good basketball player, and he sells it so well. He's like incredible. It's like I hate to say something like, oh, this is a role he was born to play, because I'm sure he would like to play other roles in his career, but like this is a role he was born to play. Like I'm he's not as tall as Magic. I know they're doing a lot of trickery behind the scenes to make him look taller than he is. But other than that, I mean, it's like he's totally embodying what we thought, what we think of Magic Johnson. And he was I would say relatively, if not completely unknown before the series. I'd never heard of him before. I'd never seen him. I want to see him in everything now.
Yeah. And I know they're doing a lot of technical stuff. I think I read or heard somewhere that for maybe some of the season 4 on-court stuff, they had camera operators like on rollerblades or something. So that I don't know what that would exactly accomplish. And Bill, to that point, I will say that although I might have enjoyed some of McKay's earlier work. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to be the person who lights up when I hear his latest kind of postmodern collage style thing with animation and as Shawn says, different film grains and stuff. I don't know whether I really need a whole lot of that in my life. I haven't liked some of the other stuff quite as much recently. And on the other hand, this is a period that we're kind of turning to these days, that kind of late 70s and then into the 80s look, and it's Licorice Pizza, and it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and it's this, and there's probably 5 other things I'm not thinking of. And there is a kind of way that things look, and everybody's smoking cigarettes all the time, and we have some longing, I think, for this particular moment. I'm not quite sure I understand what it is, though.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like The Deuce, that recent series as well. Yeah, and I do think this is doing a good job of capturing it. There has been some criticism of, the use of all the different stocks, and that sometimes it's grainy and all of that. That's not bothering me a little bit. Really, it's collage style, definitely, and I think, that's part of what McKay is doing is, he assembles these collages. I think Jonathan McNichol in our email made a really good point when kind of it seems like McKay is emulating some stuff that Oliver Stone was doing a while ago. And McNichol, if I'm not putting words in his mouth, thinks that Stone just did it much better. But it doesn't bother me. I know there's been criticism of overuse, of breaking the fourth wall. I enjoy it. I haven't gotten sick of it yet. There's nothing subtle about that Adam McKay style at all. And I think that's part of the criticism, but I think for this piece, it does work. It's over the top, but so was that whole Showtime Lakers thing was over the top. And so many of these people were over the top people in their actual lives. There might be some ethical problems in terms of how real people are being depicted in some pretty negative and not true to life ways. But for the most part, I think if you really approach it as this is a fiction and he's playing with this, it's very, very playful, then I think maybe you can look past some of that other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Carolyn, to your earlier point, I actually think we're in a period where there are fewer big league or major athletes that people know about if they're not fans of the sport. I mean, it's sort of everybody who's in Subway commercials right now. Those are the people who are famous kind of beyond the boundaries of their own sports. And then there's sort of not much else beyond that. So it's Tom Brady and Steph Curry and Simone Biles. And, there's just a few people that I think people would recognize right away. And I think the NBA has really kind of faded back. I mean, LeBron, people know. Right now, there's a team in the NBA that has so completely dominated the league that they'd already secured the best record in the league with more than 10 games left to go. They made
your Phoenix Suns.
My Phoenix Suns. But nobody knows that. Nobody knows that the Phoenix Suns are having one of the most historic. No, you know it, but nobody knows that outside because nobody even knows who Devin Booker is. Maybe CP3. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Carolyn, what I really wanted to hear about quickly, because we're running out of time, is I'm wondering if the appeal of Winning Time and some of these other kind of look backs into the 80s is the hedonism. We're kind of living in a time where people are very nervous about their own biological urges. Are they going to get canceled? Are they going to get Me Too'd? Are they being a Me Too? There's this sort of a no worries quality, perhaps to a fault, Carolyn, to Jerry Buss and Magic Johnson and the people around them.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really fair point. I think, everything is so filled with nostalgia right now. You have shows that are set in like the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, and it is kind of this like look back at like these are glory days. And I think that is a fair thing. Like maybe it was that people just were freer back then and that's what we're glorifying. So yeah, I mean, but also like this is an HBO show. So like no matter when it's set, there's always going to be like, just sex everywhere, right? Like that's just like kind of an HBO hallmark. So that didn't necessarily stand out to me with this. I found the techniques of using different kinds of cameras and the edits and kind of the like, hokey like 70s cartoons that were spliced in. I found it worked in like taking me to that period and kind of bringing me into that. Because again, this is a world I had no clue about.
All right, we're going to have to stop there. I've screwed up the clock. We won't have a lot of time to make some endorsements, but we'll do that after this.
There it is. Check it out. Move. If you got the nerve, lash out for your just desserts. It's not just the words. Some of y'all heads up in the cloud.
We're back. Very quick thank yous. I'd like them to be longer because Kat Pastor, as our technical producer, does amazing work every day. And Jonathan McPants, of course, the indispensable producer of The Nose. Time to make some recommendations with our wonderful panel, Shawn Murray, Bill Yousman, Carolyn Paine. Shawn, do you feel like going first with a recommendation?
Absolutely not, but I'll do it anyway.
Okay.
I just read Gabriel Garcia Marquez's collection of short stories, No One Writes to the Colonel, which is just a fascinating. It's like 180 pages. It's very short, but it's very rich and dense and like uncommonly just strange, but it's great. I don't know. Just you should read that. Even if you don't like short fiction, just read it anyway.
Oh, beautiful. I love that. Shawn, always full of surprises. All right. Carolyn, how about you? I hate to make you follow Garcia Marquez, but you're going to have to.
Now I just look like a shallow idiot because I'm going to endorse The Thing About Pam, which is the Renee Zellweger series. It's based on a true crime, which then became like a Dateline story and a Dateline podcast. And unlike what Shawn just endorsed, that will enrich your mind and give you things to think about. This will just help, it gives you something to think about. It makes you fear your neighbors for sure. Renee Zellweger is pretty amazing in this. And it also has like a great cast of supporting people, including like Katie Nixon and Judy Greer, who are great comedians as well. And if you like true crime, and I think it's pretty well done. I think it's worth a watch. So we'll go with that.
You will be surprised to know that I've watched, 3 or 4 episodes of this. Which, not necessarily how I usually roll, but that's the way things are right now. Okay, so Bill Yousman, what about you? Oh, not hearing Bill. Where did Bill go?
Here I am.
There he is.
I'm going to go with the theme of the episode with 2 quick things. One is one of the great works of sports journalism, The Breaks of the Game by David Halberstam, which followed the Portland Trailblazers, which is where Jack McKinney came from during their, kind of tumultuous seasons. And it does a great job of also looking at issues of race in the NBA, which the show Winning Time touches on as well. So that's The Breaks of the Game by David Halberstam. Came out in 1981, but still worth looking at. And then just very, very quickly, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's Substack is really interesting to follow. And he wrote one of the best pieces about, the Oscar debacle called Will Smith Did a Bad, Bad Thing. So that's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on Substack.
All right. I'll just add to that because it's also available on HBO. Although I almost feel like you should finish Winning Time before you watch it. Magic and Bird, A Courtship of Rivals. It's the most reflective I've ever seen Larry Bird be. At one point, he talks about the fact that, they famously faced one another in the NCAA championship. Then they were on Team USA together where they kind of bonded a little bit, I think. And then they hit the NBA and they were just going at each other hammer and tongs, often pretty unpleasantly. And Bird says, I think that was mostly me. Because, I've never heard Larry Bird say something like that. But he said, I think Magic probably thought we were going to get along pretty well. So that's terrific. It's really interesting and it'll add to your enjoyment of Winning Time. I'm going to endorse about as enthusiastically. Bill knows that all I ever do is complain about how the serio-comic mode, speaking of Bruce Willis, has infected everything. And it's not that I don't like it. I just don't think it should be the only flavor on the menu, which it often seems to almost be. But I fell in love with this series from 2017 called Imposters. It's a dark comedy, I'm told. It's about con men and con women. It doesn't have a lot of really big stars, particularly in the sort of group of 5 protagonists. However, it does have just some amazing scenery chewing by Uma Thurman as an assassin. It does have Mary Kay Place as a kind of very maternal kind of mother kind of person, mother one of the characters. It has a few kind of famous people in it, but the leads are not. They are kind of unsung people. They're all terrific, all 5 of them, and it's just really, really fun. It is both funny and dark enough to have you worry about how things are going to come out in certain situations. So I, constant complainer about the serio-comic mode, am endorsing the serio-comedy Imposters. I watched both seasons in about 2 days, and I was sorry when it was all over. And I'm sorry this episode of The Nose is over because I love these panelists so much. The amazing Carolyn Paine, the amazing Shawn Murray, the amazing Bill Yousman. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, 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 yeah.